Yo, what is up, y'all? My name is Rob Donaldson, and welcome back to another edition of Rob's Best Bets. And we are once again talking about college basketball conference tournament futures. And in this episode, we are looking at the Big Ten. And I am so pleased to be joined by one of my closest buddies, David Eickholt. He's an insider for 24/7 Sports and CBS Sports, and he's really got an eye on the Iowa Hawkeye program and also just the Big Ten. But hey, I'm not going to short him on that. He's dialed into everything college basketball, and I am so pleased to be joined by him today to break down the entire bracket. We're going to do it more so in long form than a lot of these other videos. So as you guys are watching it, we'll touch on a lot of different teams, a lot of different angles, a lot of different just lines to the championship game. And on the back end, I'm also going to be giving you guys my futures bets with the amount of units I'm going to be wagering and all that there too. But let's go ahead and jump right into this Big Ten bracket breakdown with my buddy, David Eickholt. David, welcome. Thank you for hopping on. Obviously, you are my go-to for all things Dua Lipa and all things Iowa anything. You're just plugged in better than everybody on in the beat. And yeah, welcome aboard, brother. Thank you for hopping on.
The fact that you started with Dua Lipa, and that's probably the correct order in my expert knowledge, to be honest with you. So I'm very thankful for that. Can't wait to go see her for 2 days in Dallas. I'm buying tickets to the second concert too, by the way.
Well, you know, if there's a GIF lexicon, it exists in your phone. So I know that you're my go-to for anything that happens on that side of things. But man, Big Ten tournament with a lot of new additions this year, obviously from the Pac-12, and now we have a cut line, and it got really dramatic on the final day of the regular season with Iowa beating Nebraska. Yeah. Take me through just kind of, what do you think about this Iowa team? Obviously, they were the last team to make the Big Ten tournament. Now they're sitting at the 15 seed going up against Ohio State, and they're 350-1 is their odds to win this thing. Are they a team of destiny that just kind of snuck in at the right time? Just take me through your thoughts on this Iowa line to the championship.
Well, the craziest thing about Iowa this season, Rob, is Iowa's performance in road and neutral environments. Like, they're in 2025, not during the season, but since the calendar change, Iowa has not been involved in a single-digit road game. Most of them they've lost, but they've all been by double digits. Like even when they beat Nebraska the final day of the regular season to be able to get into the Big Ten tournament by double digits. But Iowa's a team that's had to overcome a bunch of adversity this year. I mean, Owen Freeman, star player, leading rebounder, out for the season as of a few weeks ago. They have a number of different guys hurt. I'm not going to go so far as to say team of destiny, Rob. I think when you look at the Big Ten, especially the road that Iowa has, it's not a pretty road. I mean, if they were going to, looking at the scenarios heading into the final day, I don't think you really wanted to play Ohio State in the first round. I just think from an athleticism standpoint and a play style standpoint, I don't think it really matches up well for Iowa, especially in that second half. I think you would have much rather played Rutgers, because at least Rutgers is the more underachieving team despite the high-end talent there. So, if you want to coin the team of destiny, man, that's all you. I'm not going to talk you into it. I'm not going to talk you out of it, but they do have shooters. I mean, Peyton Sandford, Josh Dix, the 1-2 scoring combo, when they get red hot, I mean, they're as dangerous as anybody in the conference from a 1-2 standpoint. The problem is now on that end of the floor, Rob. Can't rebound, and they have not been able to stop teams at a consistent basis this year. So it might be in the homeland of Caitlin Clark, but I don't think that Iowa Magic's going to translate over into the men's program.
Hey, totally fair, and I applaud your realism on that. I guess just conceptually, when you're looking at those single buys, when you look at the playing games, the 3 playing games on the front end, and then the teams that would be next on deck, not just kind of looking at the projected matchups or what you even are predicting to be the matchups, but out of those, 5 teams right there on that single buy line, who would you prefer to draw? Would you prefer to draw a team like Purdue? Would you prefer Purdue or Wisconsin or Illinois? Just kind of take me through who you think is kind of the next on deck that you would like to have theoretically.
This might be a kind of a hot take, I would rather draw Illinois. Illinois has just been so inconsistent this year. We know that they have what I would say top 15 talent wise. Like when they are all put together, they could make a run. And if they're all healthy and shooting the ball well from 3-point range, which they have not this season at all. And it's very interesting considering I still feel like they have enough good shooters on the team, but just is not translated into actual production, right? A team like Wisconsin scares me. I know they have not played well over the past couple of weeks, but I love John Tonje. And if you get him and Blackwell together and you get Steven Crowell to grab more than three rebounds over the course of a whole basketball game, despite being 7 feet tall, that's going to be an X factor for me. I don't want to play Braden Smith. I just don't. I mean, look at the March Madness runs we've seen over how many years, Rob? Like it's defense and it's outstanding point guard play. Like Braden Smith is transcendent enough from a college standpoint. The dude can go out there and get you 25 and 10 and be the catalyst behind a late Purdue team, late surge. I don't think Purdue has enough scoring options outside of him and Trey Kaufman-Renn. Still would not be a team I'd like to go against. But out of those, I would say the safest bet is probably Illinois, but at the same time, Illinois is probably the most dangerous wild card. Like if they get going and they're feeling themselves, I would not be surprised to see Illinois make a run. But if they go out there in that first single bye game and get blown out by 20, Rob, it's not going to surprise me either.
Yeah, and honestly, a good betting strategy, or if you're predicting just the bracket and how it plays out, a good way to play it is you key in on those high variance teams and you say, all right,
Yeah.
I want to bet against their line because I think they're going to get picked off or at least have the potential to get picked off by one of these longer shots on the board. And so maybe not. Maybe it's Iowa playing Illinois. Maybe it's Ohio State. But Ohio State, just kind of take me through your thoughts on them because if they do predictably kind of win against Iowa in the first round, they are going to draw that Illinois team that is high variance. Ohio State is a team that desperately needs wins in this tournament to get on the bubble or get
Yeah.
past the bubble, if you will. Heck, they can get an auto bid if they win the whole thing. But kind of take me through your thoughts on Ohio State, not only in this first round matchup, but potentially during their line.
What Ohio State team were you getting, man? Like, I hate saying that about the Big Ten, but I also feel like the Big Ten has just been underwhelming as a whole, right? I think before the year, you're kind of getting excited about a couple of different teams. Like, if Michigan State ends up putting together a March run, especially with Izzo, it's not going to surprise me. With Ohio State, though, I just don't know if they have enough go-to scores to really make a run in March. Like, that's the big thing that's holding me off. And can we talk about them needing wins to really push them over the edge, Rob? Like, the bubble sucks this year, and we're still talking about expanding the NCAA tournament. We're talking about Nebraska, who was on the first four out yesterday before the loss to Iowa. They're not even in the conference tournament. And you know my opinion about teams getting cut from the conference tournament. We're the same opinion about that. It's crap. And it's sad that the Penn State coach and Fran McCaffrey both kind of had to say it because nobody's going to take them seriously. And why? It's because they were very much on the cusp or not making it at all. With this Ohio State team, I think athletically they have a lot of upside. I think they can key in and play some good defense at times. The big key to me when it comes to all these middle tier Big Ten teams or teams trying to get in the tournament, are they shooting the three ball well? Because if Illinois gets it going from three, then I think if you reseed the tournament, Rob, quite frankly, I would probably put them at number 4. I think that's the kind of upside they have. I'm not going to put them over a Michigan State. Michigan in itself, I'm sure we'll get there, scares me to some degree, but I do trust Dusty May and what he's been able to do over the course of his career. With Ohio State, if they're not hitting threes, I think they're very much in a danger zone. And if Iowa goes out there in that first round game and they hit double digit threes against Ohio State and they can't come back on the other end of the floor and convert those open opportunities, Rob, then I think Iowa might have a realistic shot. But if Ohio State goes out there and they give you 8 to 10 3-pointers, they're able to space the floor. They're able to get teams out in transition. They're able to withstand an inevitable Illinois run. I think there's enough upside there, but I would be very surprised if Ohio State made it through the third game of the tournament. I just think that's when their legs would give out, and I don't trust their shooting enough. So again, not enough go-to scores in my book to really take a chance on them.
Hey, no, that's totally fair. Ohio State is going to be a future that I end up placing. They kind of remind me almost of NC State. Same 17 and 14 record heading into the conference tournament. They're playing on the first day. we have seen some teams make a Big Ten tournament run, and 65-1 is where Ohio State is currently sitting at in terms of odds. Maybe worth a stab in my book, but I 100% see where you're coming from there. But let's go to the double buys because we have kind of some newcomers into that area, whether it's UCLA, new to the conference, Maryland, new to being at the top of the conference, at least in comparison to the past couple years, and then Michigan from almost dead last to, third seed in the tournament. And then Michigan State, almost kind of like a resurgence. Tom Izzo, great year. And nobody
Yeah.
really expected it. Everybody expected the last 2 years from Michigan State. And now they are just drubbing everybody. So when you're looking at those double buys, who do you think is the most susceptible? And also, who do you think is your favorite out of those four?
I hate to be boring. Michigan State, just what they did against Michigan the other day, and I trust Tom Izzo. And you know what the craziest part to me about this Michigan State team, Rob? There's no real name player. Like, yes, there's Jace Richardson, and we've been able to see what he's been able to do, and he's probably got an upcoming decision to make. But like before the year, there's usually those one or two key Michigan State guys where you're like, man, I could see him going for 18 to 20. I could see him getting 14 and what, 9 and in two blocks on the other end, right? There was nobody that really jumped out to me. I know Frankie Fiddler, people expect a lot more out of him than what they've been able to get, but I trust Tom Izzo, and that drubbing over Michigan was really impressive. Did you? I need to get this stat right, but about Michigan, I think at the end of the season, Rob, at least in conference play, they were actually outscored, and they still won more than 70% of their conference games. That is
Right.
a wild stat to me. But at the same time, that tells me, especially in March, if they know how to win close games and they get it going, we've seen teams with iron will and survive close matchups to really make something happen. So maybe you take a look at that. I love Michigan State. I think UCLA could be the wild card. I think they've struggled with consistency. I know they had that spurt maybe back in January or so where they were really trending downward. But again, it's UCLA. They have enough name players. If they get it going, maybe they make a run. Of the four teams that I feel like I have the best baseline on, I think it's Maryland. Like I could see Maryland making it the final weekend, but I don't know how high their upside truly is. But I also think you know what to expect when you go up against Maryland. Like you just know the most about that team. Because Michigan's been outscored, because we've seen two different styles of Izzo ball throughout the year and not having that go-to guy in the clutch, it still feels like even as a one seed to me, they're a little bit of a wild card. But I'm going to prioritize defense, rebounding, guard play, and Izzo. And that's why I'm buying stock into Michigan State.
I don't blame you even one bit there. And kind of to your point with Michigan, yeah, crazy stat, 100% true. And all season long with them, it's kind of felt like their offense can really stagnate because they do try to run a lot of action through their post players. And it almost kind of like Arizona over the past couple years where they had, two 7-footers and everybody wanted to get hyped about that edge that you have down low. Well, yeah, that's great when you're towering over guys getting twos, but you have to facilitate the ball and rotate it around the edge. And when their shot needs to go up near the back end of the shot clock, it's Trey Donaldson hucking up a three with 2 seconds left, and usually it's a fadeaway or a step back, and it just never feels like this offense is in rhythm around the perimeter. And so
Yeah.
yeah, that does make them a little bit of a pickable 3 seed. And to your point, you highlighted Purdue as being a team in that single byline that you wouldn't want to play. Well, that's a potential draw for Michigan in their first game. So kind of take me through that bottom side of the bracket where you have Rutgers and USC in the playing game or the first game heading into Purdue, and then you have Michigan on the
Yeah.
back end.
I'm actually really excited about the Rutgers USC game because USC has not been a quote unquote sexy team to watch. But like with Rutgers, you have two top 5 picks, probably, maybe top 3 picks going into it. This is a time where they're going to want to shine regardless. Like, I want to see the next name brand players going in the NBA draft. I want to see them shine. And I think that there's a ton of athleticism in that game. So, I'm going to be covering the Iowa game. But I got to say, man, I'm stoked for the game after. That's going to be one I really pay close attention to. But Purdue, it's very interesting watching people like yourself, Rob, break down these tournaments because I don't think there's a wrong mindset about a lot of this stuff. It just solely depends on what you prioritize going into tournament play. And different cappers and different, personalities prioritize different things. Like for me, it's defense, rebounding, and guard play. Like that's what ultimately wins you games in March. Again, go back to Kemba Walker, the NC State run now. There's no DJ Burns and all the I can't remember a couple of things he was endorsing. Was he endorsing Hooters, like the wings or something immediately after? Yeah, okay. I'd make sure I wasn't crazy there. I prioritize those things. I am excited about. I think Michigan goes down. It does not matter who they play. I'm going to pick Purdue over them. I do think Purdue probably comes out of the bomb side of the bracket. Again, it's still a little bit scary unless they get that third go-to score. But I also think Braden Smith is the type of guy to say, you know what, get on my back. I'm carrying us home. Right. If he averages 28 points, Rob, in this tournament, it's not going to surprise me. I think he has that shooter's mentality. And once he kind of gets defenses to collapse in on him, regard him on the perimeter, he's an outstanding passer despite kind of being undersized, even at that one spot. I think he can make things happen. Kaufman Wren has a lot of pressure on him, but I also love Matt Painter. I think he's a Hall of Fame coach. I think he's outstanding. I think he's going to have the guys ready to go. So I think Michigan at that bottom of the bracket is going to lose to whoever they play, unless it was like Rutgers. But Rutgers making that round in itself would be absolutely crazy to me. I just don't see that happening whatsoever. So I think it's going to be Illinois and Purdue in that final region. I think Illinois will be able to go in there if they can beat Ohio State or Iowa. I think they'll be able to do that. That Illinois Maryland game is one I'm really excited about. I do think Illinois finds a way to kind of push that bracket. I think Illinois' pacing is going to be too much. I think they're going to really try to speed up Derek Queen. I think they're going to try to speed up the Maryland Bigs. I think they can make that happen. So I don't know who I have coming out of the bottom of the bracket. But man, I'd love to see an Illinois Purdue round. That would be an awesome way for this tournament, especially where the tournament's located too. They will flock to go see an Illinois Purdue game in Gainesfield House. So I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and regardless of which draw or which line in this bracket you're taking a look at, there's a lot of cool storylines and a lot of cool potential matchups. And, I look at that Rutgers team, and it just, to your point, it would surprise me if they make a championship game, but it's very rare that you have an 11 seed or a double digit seed in one of these conference tournaments where they have definitively the best guard in the conference, or at least the most talented guard, and then have the second most talented player in Ace Bailey. And they just haven't been able to kind of find a cohesive sort of mesh point with how they want to run everything. They also have kind of gone by the wayside with that elite defense that we've seen over the years in favor of almost like AAU ball sort of deals. So, could they pick off USC? Absolutely. That second round against Purdue, I'm not as high on Purdue as you, but I still don't think that they can work it past that.
It depends what Purdue we get, man. Like that, I know I've said that about a handful of teams, but like I'm not going to count out Painter. I think Braden Smith is probably the best player in the tournament, like from an individual standpoint. If you want to argue John Tonje and what Tonje has been able to do over the last 2 months, I'd listen to the argument for sure, and that's why Wisconsin I think could be a high ceiling team as well. But if Purdue goes out there and loses in their first game, Rob, I certainly would not judge anybody for picking against them. I really wouldn't.
Totally fair. Totally fair. And this is where we get to the fun little part because I'm going to put you on the spot and I'm going to let you pick three different teams. Okay. And
Okay.
I want at least two of them to be longer shots. So, and why by longer
Okay.
shots, I mean non-Michigan State, non-Maryland teams because there's a clear dividing line on the odds after those two. So everybody else on the board is fair game. Who would you see as kind of a potential Big Ten conference champion or even just a team that can potentially make it to the conference championship? And again, just need two, and then you can hit me with Michigan State as your third.
I knew you were going to go with that because I was going to say I'll get the boarding one out of the way, and that's Michigan State. And again, just from the Michigan State standpoint, I think the bracket works out really, really nice for them. I think that they'll be able to at least comfortably make the Big Ten tournament finals. I just like the way it really spaces itself out.
Yeah.
This one might come back and bite me in the ass. Rob, I'm going to go Illinois. I just think the upside's there. I think I trust Brad Underwood. He's a guy who has won this tournament before. Now, if we're talking winning the tournament, then getting into the first weekend of March, we don't need to go that far. But thankfully, we're only talking about conference tournaments here. Illinois, again, from an upside standpoint, I just think the value is there just based on looking at some of the odds. And then again, I'm gonna go basic. You probably already know who else I'm picking, Rob. I'd go Purdue. I just from the best overall player standpoint and coaching. If there's one, let me ask you this. I'm gonna throw this right back at you, and this kind of makes my point about why I think Purdue would be worth a look. If you had one player in this tournament you'd like to have on your team in a game-winning situation, who are you taking? Because I have two in mind immediately. I'm curious about what your thought process would be.
Yeah, that's a really fair point. Probably Braden Smith. I mean, he's shown it time and time again that if the smart play needs to be made, or if just a big shot needs to be made, everybody wants to talk about the sneaky athleticism with these white point guards, and I totally get it. But he is a guy that, and I'm gonna throw out another cliche. He's crafty. He can work a shot open, and he doesn't have to have these over exaggerated, quick twitchy movements to do it. He just kind of bullies guys down low because he does have a wider frame. He does have a quick first step, and he has the space on just his step backs to hit a shot mid range, 3 point range, or just facilitate and find an open guy. And so yeah, I would want the ball in his hands, or I'd want Harper for Rutgers just because I've seen it already.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I've already seen it a few times this year where
Yep.
the shot, even though he's missed some of these game winning shots or these kind of clutch last second buckets against Michigan at the rack and a few other examples, he has worked open a good shot, whereas so many players in this conference can't do it. And it's just annoying to watch some of these guards just drive into the lane, fumble the ball away, or throw up some weird contested layup and then just brick it off the other side of the backboard. So those would be my two. I'm curious. So Braden Smith is definitely one of your go-tos. Who would be the other guys you had in mind there?
I would say John Tonje.
I dig it.
I just think what he's been able to do at Wisconsin and the surgeons he's on. And I mean, I've watched him in the clutch. And even on top of that, Rob, he knows how to draw fouls with the best of anybody in the league. Like he can go there, drive to the rack, and then get to the free throw line where he's shot really, really well this season. But he's a guy that I've seen hit clutch step back corner threes. And there's a trait that we haven't said yet. And quite frankly, I'm surprised with him and Braden Smith, they're fearless. Like it doesn't matter what leads into the moment. They are guys that want the moment. They can live with whatever the result is, but they go out there and they get it. And it takes a special trait to be able to go out there and be fearless and to go take and make a big shot. And we've seen that this year. So again, Braden Smith would be my one, but if somebody had argued Tanjay, I'm not going to hate that either. I like Blackwell as well from Wisconsin, but he's also a guy who has not been consistent enough, especially over the last month of the season, to really kind of earn that distinction. But when's the last time we've talked about Wisconsin, Rob, where they have a variety of weapons, like true offensive weapons? They can go out there and make things happen. And I think Greg Gard's kind of reshaped what style of play he's been typically known to run. So I can't remember what odds were Wisconsin. I still love Wisconsin's ceiling, but I also don't think Wisconsin shows up in Indianapolis. That might be my one hot take. If they go in there and they win the whole thing, hats off to them, because I think they've really overperformed based on expectations this season as well.
Yeah, and Wisconsin's sitting about 7-1, right in lockstep with like a UCLA and Purdue. And let me ask you about Wisconsin because a lot of people are now out on Wisconsin because of these recent losses to Oregon in particular at home, and then Penn State to end the season at
Yep.
home. And obviously, they've lost
Yep.
3 of their last 5 games. And everybody's now kind of running with the narrative of Wisconsin is that team that peaked too early, maybe along with Michigan or classic Greg
Yep.
Gard. They're going to get bounced by the James Madison again. What are your thoughts just long term with Wisconsin? Not necessarily in this conference tournament, but just their prospects when they hit the actual, national tournament.
Yeah, Rob. I mean, I think you nailed it. I mean, it's one of those things where, again, I think the struggles continue over in the Big Ten tournament, and I think they go back to Madison. I think they have a players only meeting and say, "Hey, guys, we got to get our crap together." Because based on matchups, like if Wisconsin, does not do well in this conference tournament, but they go out there, they make a second weekend in the NCAA, Rob, like that's not going to surprise me one bit. Like they still have a Sweet 16 caliber team. Given the right matchup, I think they can make an Elite Eight run. I don't see them making it past that. And how many times have we said this about, teams? It really does all depend on matchups in March. It really, really does. I think Wisconsin could draw a lot of fits from opposing coaches if they get matched up with them. But at the same time, like you see the way that they've struggled. And at the same time, you're thinking, can they really get together? And on top of that, too, Rob, like if I'm a Wisconsin fan, I almost don't want to go farther in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah.
And this sounds crazy, but you know where I'm going with this. How many times have we seen Big Ten teams go win the damn thing, get in the tournament, and then what? When they went there and then they lost to Richmond that first round, like Rob, you could argue at that time, and I think the analytics would back it up. Iowa in that season over the last 12 games was a top 10 team in the country. They were arguably the hottest team in college basketball to end that season. And that's why there were a lot of people thinking, you know what? This is the time where Iowa breaks through to get that Sweet 16. It lined up perfectly, but Iowa didn't shoot the ball well. And I think that really deflated the fan base as a whole. So again, if Wisconsin goes in there and gets bounced early, I still would not want to draw them for the NCAA tournament because that's going to be a well-rested team that has had a lot of really good wins this season. So again, I'm not buying stock in Big Ten tournament. I'm definitely keeping my eye on them in the big one.
Yeah, and to your point, whether it's been Iowa making the run in this thing or Illinois over the past years, the Big Ten tournament champion in particular doesn't seem to get the benefit in terms of the actual NCAA tournament seed line because Iowa got the 5 seed that year. Illinois was kind of underseeded given the fact that they ran the table as well in the Big Ten tournament. And you go through that gauntlet, it kind of almost feeds into that narrative that some people like to push that the Big Ten needs to play their conference tournament earlier because the selection committee, makes a decision for these seeds the day that the Big Ten tournament ends. How much stock do they put into who even actually wins that game?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's serving the conference well, but hey.
They're not giving up the last game slot at the CBS. Like, that's not going to happen. They love it. And it probably draws them in a nice little payday, too.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But, David, appreciate you, brother, for hopping on here. Obviously, we're going to have a really fun time watching these games take place in Indy. Hopefully, we get some of these fun matchups that we're kind of outlining right there. But, just as a recap, you were in on Illinois and in on Purdue and in on Michigan State. I think those are all very, very nice picks. And I'm going to have my picks on the back end of this video as well for you guys. But appreciate it, David. And, Godspeed, brother.
Yeah, take care, brother. I appreciate you.
Once again, I want to give a big shout out to David Eickholt for hopping on today because, he's a busy dude. Iowa women's hoops is in full season swing. Iowa men's hoops has their season still going strong, surprisingly so. And, I appreciate him. I appreciate his time. Obviously, he's not new to the channel, but every single time he hops on, it's always a great time. And I hope you guys appreciate it as well. But let's go ahead and jump into my Big Ten futures picks, and they're going to be a little bit different than David's picks. He had Illinois, Purdue, and then Michigan State, and I do think that Michigan State is a very, very viable team, and head and shoulders, I think they're playing the best basketball in the Big Ten. And let's go ahead and start with the front runner because I do have a bet on Michigan State here as well, and it's going to be for 2 units. I really do think that even with this almost being a shy 3-1 number, it's still worth a bet because Michigan State does have a pretty favorable draw out of that 8-9 matchup. And in terms of just how they're playing and how that can translate to a neutral floor, I think this is the precursor to their NCAA tournament run that they're poised to go on as well. So let's go ahead and bet 2 units on Michigan State for our first bet here in the Big Ten tournament. For pick number 2, let me take you out to our biggest long shot on the board. And this team just feels eerily similar to an NC State last year and just some of these other Big Ten teams over the years that we've seen kind of make an improbable run through the Big Ten tournament. And that is going to be Ohio State. And Ohio State, I get it. There's a lot of reasons to hate this team. Let me tell you why you should actually love this team. And the reason why you should love this team is there's a lot of untapped potential here just in terms of the actual talent. They also have veteran leadership at the guard spots. They've also had success in this Big Ten tournament going back to last year. And when you're looking at this draw, facing Iowa in round 1, potentially Illinois in round 2, and then Maryland, I feel like that's actually the easiest draw of all of these draws from that initial first round, because the other ones include Purdue and Michigan, or Wisconsin, UCLA, and then obviously Michigan State is at the very top. And a lot of those kind of feel daunting, but I do think that Maryland, despite the fact that I actually really like that team, they are a team that plays a style that is very, very pickable. And when you're looking at this time of year, you're just looking for that opportunity. And I do think that Ohio State would have the capability of playing Maryland tough. We already saw Ohio State beat Maryland as well in Columbus this season. And for that reason, I am totally fine laying 1 unit on the Ohio State Buckeyes to win the Big Ten tournament. 65-1. It just kind of felt like a no-brainer to me, and I'm willing to ride that, hopefully to a point where we have some hedge value in the semifinal round or in the championship game. All right, so let's go ahead and head out to our third and final future here in the Big Ten tournament, and that team is going to be UCLA. And the reason why I like UCLA in this tournament and why I'm investing 2 times into the top side of the bracket is because I think UCLA is actually playing some of the best ball in this conference right now. And if there is a team that's going to pick off Sparty, I don't think it's going to be Oregon. I don't think it's going to be Indiana. I don't even think it's going to be Wisconsin. I think it's going to be UCLA. I really like this team's makeup. Mick Cronin is a coach that I really like in conference tournament play. And again, they're getting that double bye, which I think is very, very important to note. And in that potential matchup, I actually think that UCLA is going to be right there to win the game at the very end. So let's go ahead and take the Bruins at plus 700, 7-1 our money for 1.5 units for our final bet here in the Big Ten tournament. All that being said, I really want to thank you guys for checking out today's video. And once again, I want to thank David Eickholt for coming on. He's awesome. Follow his stuff on Twitter/X at David Eickholt. And also, if you're an Iowa fan and you're not already plugged into Hawkeye Insider 24/7 Sports, I so recommend it. It's the best way to stay dialed into the program. And again, I'm really thankful for his time on this episode. But with all that being said, y'all, I appreciate the love you've been showing to these. And as I always say, I will see you in a future video. Take it easy.